Howdy, my name is Jacob Morgenroth and I'm going to be presenting a strategic analysis of Amazon.com for the Strategic Management class MERA 466 here at Texas A&M Galveston. The first section that's going to be mentioned is the executive summary. The executive summary is going to seek to summarize the entire paper that this presentation is being spoken about. The executive summary is first mentioning the external and internal analysis of Amazon.com in the industry of retail e-commerce located within the United States. The word retail refers to finished products and goods, and e-commerce meaning commercial transactions that are conducted through the internet. The industry of retail e-commerce is the business of selling finished products and goods through the internet. Amazon's other businesses located in different industries will be addressed briefly, although the main focus of this study will be about the retail e-commerce industry and Amazon itself. The external analysis will provide a general environmental analysis, an industry analysis, 5 forces analysis, driving forces analysis, and a competition analysis. These sections will seek to give insight into the external analysis, into the external situation of the retail e-commerce industry located in the U.S. The internal analysis will conduct an organizational analysis, an analysis of the firm's resources, a financial analysis, and a SWOT analysis. These sections will all be focused on the internal situation of Amazon.com. The growth of the retail e-commerce industry has been tremendous over the past 5 years. In 2017, total sales for the industry amounted to $446 billion. By 2023, the industry is expected to grow to $735 billion. The industry's top 4 players are Amazon, Walmart, Apple, and Home Depot. These 4 players accounted for 17.9% of the total online sales revenue for e-commerce in 2017. Amazon has currently captured more of this market than any other retailer with $54.47 billion in revenue. Walmart comes in second in terms of total revenue with $14.1 billion. Amazon sales have risen from $7 billion in 2004 to $233 billion in 2018. Last year, in 2018, Amazon's revenue grew 31%, the highest growth rate that the company has ever had in its history. The retail e-commerce industry grew 15.3% from 2017 to 2018 in the amount of total sales online, and just over 53% of that growth came from Amazon and the other top 9 retailers that are in the industry. The retail e-commerce industry is a very competitive market and has some very major players. The 2 leading players in the industry share the same competitive strategy, cost leadership. Walmart, the second largest retailer, is Amazon's main competitor, who is currently seeking to grow further in the industry, although Amazon has no intention of losing any space in that industry. Home Depot and Apple have different strategies for growth that are not exactly aimed at increasing their market share through sales in the online retail e-commerce industry. The mission of Amazon is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find anything they would want to purchase online, all while the company endeavors to offer customers the lowest possible price. Amazon is meeting that mission by currently doing business in 14 different countries around the world: China, the US, Germany, Japan, the UK, France, Italy, Spain, Canada, India, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, and the Netherlands. The company currently keeps its focus on this mission and stays true to the customer obsession principle founded by Jeff Bezos. This principle states that the leaders of Amazon are always supposed to start with the customer and then work backwards. The company history. On July 5th of 1994, Jeff Bezos and his wife opened an online bookstore in Seattle, Washington, because of the city's reputation as a tech hub. Bezos and his wife financed the company themselves with $10,000 from their own pockets. He and his staff began working from his garage on desks they made out of old doors. In May 1997, Amazon went public, having $18 per share in the very beginning. And at that time, the company had a valuation of $300 million. In November of 2002, Amazon began selling clothing. Amazon announced that it had partnered with several major clothing companies and began offering over 400 different brands in their online store. At this point in time in Amazon's history, they now have gone far beyond just selling books. They were now selling electronics, kitchenware, toys, music, and even magazine subscriptions. In 2003, Amazon launched a web hosting business known as AWS, or Amazon Web Services. This allowed them to start generating extra income by licensing their platform to other e-commerce sites. 16 years later, AWS has become a crucial revenue driver, and Amazon now dominates the cloud hosting service market. In February of 2005, Amazon debuted their new service, Amazon Prime. Jeff Bezos announced the idea during an earnings call, explaining they would now offer a $79 a year loyalty program that includes free 2-day shipping on any order. In 2018, Amazon Prime had more than 100 million customers, and Prime is now considered one of Amazon's greatest assets. In 2017, Amazon acquired Whole Foods, and as of 2017, Amazon has begun integrating the two companies together. With Whole Foods distribution networks, and has begun offering discounts to Prime members in stores. In September of 2018, Amazon reached a $1 trillion market cap. Investor enthusiasm for rising profits had pushed the company to be briefly worth over $1 trillion, and Amazon is only the second company in history to ever pass this threshold. The company background will be explaining the company of Amazon from 2013 to the present. It's going to cover the financial, strategic, operational, organizational, and market position of Amazon. In the financial case of Amazon, the company has been growing very rapidly, and after the Trump administration took office in 2016, the new president of the United States made major changes to the federal tax policy that created a loophole that Amazon has been able to exploit in 2017 and 2018. In 2017, Amazon had $3 billion of profits that escaped taxation, and in 2018, Amazon had $10 billion worth of profits that escaped taxation. Investor enthusiasm for the rising profits is what pushed the company to be worth over $1 trillion, and this is the reason why. Strategically, Amazon has been pursuing a cost leadership competitive strategy. They compete with large retail giants like Walmart, who currently seek to forcefully take Amazon's online presence. Amazon uses market development as their main growth strategy. The company's objective is to grow and enter into new markets around the world. Operationally, Amazon has continued with their strategies of continuous automation in order to achieve lower costs and further the company's success. The company's retail e-commerce sustainability depends on the high efficiency achieved through operations in their operations management. Operations management leaders rigorously continue their efforts to satisfy the 10 decision areas that Amazon has elected to guide their management efforts. Organizationally, Amazon has been utilizing their 14 leadership principles. These principles are aimed at guiding the footsteps of everyone within the organization. The key principle is customer obsession. This principle sits like a crown atop Amazon's concrete list, reminding leaders of the organization of Jeff Bezos' key principle to start with the customer and then work backwards. Amazon's market position has grown substantially and currently has no signs of slowing down. In 2016, their market share was 34%, and by the end of 2019, it has been predicted to reach 49%. A survey was done by researchers at the University of NYU in Georgetown, and it reports that Amazon has become the second most trusted institution in the United States behind the American military. Consumers have a high opinion of the company, and that can be seen through the 310 million listed active customers that Amazon has within the U.S. and the 90 million that currently hold Amazon Prime memberships. The purpose of this study is going to explain the external and internal situation of Amazon.com. The company is currently in the best position it has ever been all across the board. Amazon's direction should be to continue pursuing retail e-commerce growth and expansion into local avenues like brick and mortar locations and market penetration into foreign retail e-commerce markets. Amazon will reach these goals by continuing their cost leadership competitive strategy in the retail e-commerce industry. The company will also continue to use their growth. The company will also need to continue their use of the growth strategy of market penetration to ensure that they capture the opportunity that exists in foreign markets. Amazon should seek to expand into more brick and mortar locations within the U.S. by either acquiring more companies that fit their external and internal situation, or by creating their own new locations that would adequately combat the threats of other large retailers within the U.S. market. The general environmental analysis is going to be presented next, and this analysis will focus on the Picel analysis, and the Picel analysis will cover the political, environmental, socio-cultural, technological, economic, and legal factors that exist within the macro environment of the e-commerce, of the retail e-commerce industry. Political processes. The political segment. Political policies and processes can range in a wide spectrum of variation. Tax policy, fiscal policy, the political climate, tariffs and quotas, and the strength of political institutions are just some of the primary factors of the political macro environment. Some factors can be industry specific, and they can vary from the local to federal level. For instance, companies whose businesses are based primarily online have the potential to be heavily influenced by factors like trade policy. Trade policy like tariffs and quotas and embargoes could have an effect on companies who purchase and sell their goods with other countries. In the United States, the Trump administration recently began firing China over a Section 301 finding by the USTR, the United States Trade Representative, that China has repeatedly been engaging in practices to steal American intellectual property. The administration placed a 25% tariff on $50 billion worth of the total $500 billion of U.S. imports from China. The Trump administration has also recently expressed that in order to balance the trade deficit between U.S. and China, which was $375 billion last year, he is prepared to roll out tariffs on the remaining $450 billion worth of imports to do so. Trade policies like ones such as this have the potential to be highly influential. Therefore, in the retail e-commerce industry, political factors have a high impact on the general business environment. For the economic segment, economic factors that can have an effect on the retail e-commerce industry include, but are not limited to, the general economic climate, interest rates, exchange rates, the inflation rate, the unemployment rate, the growth rate, and per capita domestic product. Shifts in economic conditions may or may not have implications on the industry, so depending on the economic conditions and magnitude and time frame with which the specific implication has the ability to surmount its impact will determine its level of significance on the retail e-commerce industry. For instance, the unexpected global economic recession, the Great Recession, had one of the largest, most lasting impacts on the world since World War II. Therefore, the impact of the economic segment is high over the business environment of retail e-commerce. The socio-cultural segment, the general business environment of the retail e-commerce industry can be affected by socio-cultural factors like population size, age distribution, growth, and growth rate that are demographic factors and societal values and cultural forces and lifestyles. These forces vary by location and can change over time. One of the greatest lifestyle changes of the recent years are the ever-increasing dependencies on technology and automation. People now more than ever are gifted with the freedom to increase their well-being and reach capabilities never before imagined and dreamed of because of the increases in technology and automation. The vast majority of Americans, 95%, now own cellular devices of some kind. The share that owns cellular devices is the share that owns smartphone devices is at 77%. These developments have influenced retail e-commerce greatly, and continued growth of the smartphone lifestyle that has become so standard in the American economy and many other developed nations around the world shows no signs of slowing down. Retail e-commerce traffic through smartphone devices has been growing increasingly in recent years, and in 2015 surpassed became just as prevalent as desktop traffic. Because of the ever-changing dynamic that sociocultural factors create, companies who compete must evolve with their customers' demands or be swept away by the competition. Statistics have shown that 40% of customers are likely to go to a competitor after a bad mobile experience. Therefore, the level of impact on the industry of retail e-commerce is in the sociocultural segment is high. Technological factors have a high impact on the retail e-commerce industry due to the integral nature that the two shares. Recent advancements in these factors have created an increase in demand for products within the industry. Technological factors vary in form ranging from the pace of technological change to the technological developments that have the potential for wide-ranging effects on society, like the developments of containerization in the movement of general cargo goods. Retail e-commerce currently accounts for 10% of all retail value. Technological advancements like containerization that began in 1956 revolutionized the ability of goods being able to be transported, making possible the global markets that exist today. The retail e-commerce industry has been extremely influenced due to these developments. Although containerization preceded retail e-commerce, it is a technological development that continues to drive the scale of advancement that the industry of retail e-commerce takes advantage of to this day. The environmental segment. Environmental factors have a low impact on the general business environment of the retail e-commerce industry. Factors that pertain to the environmental segment are weather, climate change, and associated forces like water shortages. The industry is relatively protected from such factors due to the nature of the business being online and it not being strictly located to a single geographic area. While things like storms and droughts have potential, can have potentially large effects on the consumer industry, weather conditions have a low level of impact overall because they are not that prevalent on society, and they also have the ability of potentially producing revenue gains in customers needing to stock up on items before and after weather-related disasters. For the legal segment, legal and regulatory factors have a high level of impact on the retail e-commerce industry. Factors from this segment include the laws and regulations that companies must abide by, such as labor laws and consumer laws, antitrust laws, and safety and occupational health regulations. In 2015, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, repealed existing legislation that had been in effect for some time known as net neutrality. Net neutrality was existing internet legislation that enforced internet service providers to treat all traffic over the internet equally. The net neutrality rule was overturned by a vote of 3-2 by the members of the FCC. The repeal came after heavy amounts of lobbying and protesting had surfaced from various special interest groups. Lobbying is also a legal factor that has the power to influence the industry. In 2018, Amazon spent over $14 million lobbying in the internet industry, and since 2015 have spent nearly just over $48 million lobbying in the industry in the United States. Therefore, in the industry of retail, e-commerce, legal and regulatory factors can have a high impact on the general business environment. The industry analysis will be examined next. When aiming to evaluate a diversified business strategy, analyzing the attractiveness of the industries in which it operates is crucial. The industry analysis evaluates industry attractiveness by examining market size, market growth rate, the industry's dominant and economic features, a description of the industry, the scope of competition of rivals, and the market segmentation, the pace of technology change, and the industry trends. The more promising these measures are, the higher the chance companies have for good long-term performance. Next, the description of the industry is the first topic to be discussed. The retail e-commerce industry is a broad and dynamic, and its scope can be challenging to grasp. In 2000, total e-commerce sales in the U.S. amounted to $27 billion. Almost 20 years later, in 2017, total e-commerce sales had risen to $449 billion. The industry's focus is centered around the sales of consumer electronics, apparel, and accessories. Amazon is a large company in the United States in the retail e-commerce industry, accounting for 40% of the total sales. The retail e-commerce industry is expected to reach $560 billion by 2023, and the industry is set to grow to, in 2019, the retail e-commerce industry is expected to reach $560 billion, and by 2023, the industry is set to grow to $735 billion. The industry's dominant economic features. The dominant economic features of the retail e-commerce industry are the market size, market growth rate, competition from rivals, and emerging opportunities and threats, and the industry's profitability. These features culminate to create an attractive industry to new businesses and potential investors. The industry had a strong year in 2018. Retail e-commerce growth accounted for 80% of the total market growth, which will be discussed further in the following section. The market size and market growth rate. Throughout the coming years, up until the furthest prediction of 2023, Statista predicts that the retail e-commerce industry in the U.S. will continue to will continue on a trend of steadily increasing growth. In 2018, the industry was at $504 billion in total U.S. sales. By 2023, the market size is predicted to increase 35% to $735 billion. The industry has around 300,000 companies competing within the United States, excluding market sellers, which are like sellers who list their products on Amazon's on websites like Amazon and eBay. The industry's trends. According to AbsoluteNet, e-commerce will soon account for 15% of all specialty retail sales in North America. Currently, e-commerce is 23% of all retail in China. How we interact, purchase and discover goods as well as returning to them is now a 24/7 cycle, and not only in the business to consumer markets, but also in the business to business markets as well. The case can be made that e-commerce integration has now become the #1 priority. Another trend is one that is already going on in China. Consumers will be able to buy directly on social platforms. Social buying is already standard in China, where 55% of social app users reported buying services or goods directly on a social app. Mobile phones will become much faster, and mobile websites will take on a hybrid application called PWA, which stands for Progressive Web App. The reason for the switch, is that e-commerce users are deterred from using their standard mobile websites because the current websites do not have the capabilities for ease of use with mobile devices, which in turn it deters e-commerce users. The new PWAs are expected to make the retail industry get much faster and become more fluid. The five forces analysis is next. The five forces analysis is the most widely used tool for assessing the strengths of an industry's competitive forces. This model is comprised of pressure stemming from buyer bargaining power, the threat of new entrants, the power of suppliers, the power of substitutes, and the intensity of rivalry. The competitive pressures that come from the threats of new entrants within an industry tends to be weak due to the high amount of strength that existing players within the industry already currently possess. Several factors influence whether or not the threat of new candidates entering the industry would make them strong in terms of competitive pressure. Some of these factors include level of capital requirements, brand preferences, customer loyalty, and the existence of economies of scale within operations. Another factor that relates to the magnitude of the pool entrants and resources at their disposal. The larger the pool, the stronger the potential threat that new entrants can have, and the threat grows even stronger when some of the candidates have large amounts of resources at their disposal. While this may be the case, new candidates would have an incredibly hard time coming up with the resources that it would take to compete with the top 4 large retail giants like Amazon, Walmart, Apple, and Home Depot. The industry grew 15% from 2017 to 2018 in the amount of total sales, and just over 53% of that growth came from the top 9 retailers within the industry. Therefore, based on the size of the largest players within the industry, the threat of new entrants to the relation and their relation to the competitive pressures within the industry is weak. The power of suppliers in the retail e-commerce industry. The power of the supplier depends on the degree to which suppliers have bargaining power to determine the conditions in terms of the supply to their benefit. Some factors that can determine the level of supplier power are the ability of industry members to change their purchase their purchases to a close substitute or another supplier, whether or not inputs are in short supply, and if industry members are major customers of suppliers. The industry is broad and the level of suppliers. Power varies from company to company based on who they do business with. Due to the fact that this prevails over the broad spectrum of the industry, the power of suppliers is considered to be moderate. The bargaining power of buyers is the next to be discussed, and it is affected by differing factors like whether or not many or only some buyers have the ability to leverage to render price concessions, and other needed items, and the amount to which buyers are price sensitive. Other things like the number of buyers in an industry create effects as well. The number of buyers in the industry is very high, and customers are generally never dealt with face to face, causing the bargaining power of buyers to be brought down. Individual consumers rarely have much bargaining power to begin with when dealing with sellers, and the online marketplace tends to be made up of many different independent consumers. The exceptions where price haggling exists on big ticket items like houses, cars, and boats are items that tend to be bought in person, which excludes them from the retail e-commerce industry. So for most consumer services and goods, individual buyers of the industry tend to have no bargaining leverage. Therefore, the power of buyers in the retail e-commerce industry is weak. The power of substitutes is defined by 3 criteria that determine the strength of the competitive pressure, and they are whether the substitutes are readily available and attractively priced, whether buyers view the substitutes as comparable or better in terms of quality and performance, and other relevant attributes, and whether costs that buyers incur in switching to the substitutes are high or low. In the retail e-commerce industry, items are readily available and can be priced low to sell quickly. Similarly, depending on the good and or service being purchased, there can also be low amounts of particular items that could be available to be purchased. In the industry, it all depends on the goods or services that are being purchased and whether or not the buyers view the substitutes as comparable or better items that determine the power of the substitute. Lastly, the costs buyers are made to have when switching. Buyers in retail e-commerce industry can be affected by this in a variety of ways, ranging from high costs to low costs. Therefore, in the industry of retail e-commerce, the power of substitutes is moderate due to the broad spectrum of goods and services available. The intensity of rivalry in the e-commerce industry is the last to be discussed, and that is the most strong force of the 5 forces analysis. It's nearly always the strongest force, and in the retail e-commerce industry, it's no different. Companies are always competing with one another to gain a competitive edge over their rivals, and when companies make moves happen to be successful, the others follow along to keep up with the competition. There's a continual pattern of action and reaction between the players that is at work within the industry. Many of the existing industry members in the retail e-commerce are strong and have influence when it comes to competitive pressure. They are able to take themselves and enter into market segments where they do not already have a presence in the market and begin competing due to their current strength. Due to the 5 forces, or due to these forces of competition, the competitive pressures that is within the e-commerce industry, and in the intensity of rivalry between sellers is rated as strong.